Hi there, everyone. Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about how to develop a good research question. I'm going to be introducing some of the topics in the module and specifically give you some hints and tips about getting started. So first of all, I want to talk about research topics. So research topics should have something to do with your area of expertise. So this might be the subfield that you concentrated in, a topic that you took a few courses in, or that you've read a lot about, or that you have some other connection to or experience with. And also it should be something that aligns with your interests. It makes it a lot easier to dedicate the kind of time that you'll be spending on this project to a project that addresses a question that you're interested in or that you care about. But keep in mind that sometimes the passion will grow slowly. So sometimes you might have a topic that might seem kind of boring on its face, but as you get into it, you might notice the passion growing for that project. So keep in mind that this can happen and it can kind of ebb and flow over time. So from this research topic, we are going to need to identify an empirical research question. So empirical questions have a few things in common. One thing is that it's a question about what is. So it's a question about something that is actually happening in the world that we can get evidence from the world to support or refute. It is also a question that is linking different phenomena together, right? So it usually is about some sort of relationship between two or more concepts. We also want our question to be falsifiable. This means that we need to consider if we could identify a situation where what our theory is true versus when it's not. So we want to have a research question that can be answered by information from the world about a relationship between concepts that we can distinguish between whether or not we've got the right answer. We also want to conduct research in a way that leaves breadcrumbs for future research. So this is replicability. So we want to be able to do our research and formulate our question in such a way that other people would be able to duplicate that research in the future. So it might be easier to understand what an empirical research question is by comparing it to what it is not. So there are a number of different types of questions, and I'm going to go over a few of them here just to compare. So a factual question is a question that essentially has just one fairly obvious answer. So we could think about questions about women in politics and say, how many women ran for Congress in 2018? And there is an answer to that question. We could look it up and we could find it. Now we may quibble about how we're counting things or something like that, but there is one factually correct answer to that question. We could compare this to a normative question, and this is a question that has values embedded into it. Where it's asking a question about what should happen. So a normative question about women in politics might be, should more women run for office? Now this is contrasted with a hypothetical question, which is a question that we cannot answer with the evidence that we could gather on the earth about what is happening, right? So here you might think about a question like, what if all candidates for Congress were women? Well, we don't know what that looks like. We could study what would happen if they were all men, because we have seen that happen in the world before, but we can't gather information to answer that hypothetical question. And this is all compared to an empirical research question. And here we want to link concepts together, right? And they need to be something that we can gather information from the world about in order to test this question. So a question like that might be, what are the factors that lead to more women running for office? Okay. So those are empirical research questions, but what about good questions? Good empirical research questions have a few things in common as well. They tend to be linked to existing literature, right? They tend to speak to the way that other people have answered similar questions before. They add to a narrative, they continue a story. Also, good empirical research questions do not have an obvious answer. These might be questions where it goes against conventional wisdom, or where you're uncovering something unique or a puzzle, something like this. This, of course, can make it a lot more interesting. And this leads to the next characteristic of good empirical research questions, which is that they should be relevant and useful. This doesn't mean that they have to solve all of the world's problems, but they should be broad enough and interesting enough that they could make a difference in the world, or they could help us better understand something that is important to the way we live our lives and the way we distribute power in the country and around the world and these kinds of things. Also, a good empirical research question should be outcome oriented, in that we should be focusing on trying to explain an outcome. So this means we're focusing on the contents of the dependent variable. So what are the things that lead to this, as opposed to what does this lead to, all right? This is easier to answer with the kinds of statistical models that we have. And so these are the kinds of questions that we're going to start working on and start thinking about pretty much right away. So what's up next in this module? Well, we've got some readings, and the good news is that I managed to find all open source information except for one book that is an ebook that is available to you through the library. So in the module, you'll see the instructions for how to access that resource. If you have any issues getting to it, definitely let me know, but it should be fairly straightforward. You will need to log in with your ACE account though. All right, we're also going to fill out this research interest questionnaire. Now this is really important, and as specific as you can be, that's even better, because it helps me to organize you into subfield groups. These groups are going to be really important for helping you stay accountable and make progress as you work toward your final paper. And we're going to start daydreaming about our topics. So it might help if you think about, what was your favorite class in political science? What stood out to you? What questions remain unanswered? What puzzles do you want to solve? Maybe go back through your old syllabi or some of the old papers that you've written that you really liked, and try to start thinking about focusing in on a research question. And that's where we're going to pick up next time. Thanks for joining me. See you soon.